Welcome to Red Light, Green Light, the podcast where top leaders in science, tech, pharma, finance, and innovation open up and get real. You are in the right place. You're about to hear personal stories from key moments of their career arcs and how they've struggled and succeeded when it comes to moving audiences from the red light of risk to the green light of go. We've got an exceptional invite-only lineup of leaders who've been in the room and at the table when stakes were high, decisions were hard, and their stories had to land. From the virtual room to the boardroom, they share what worked, what didn't, and how they paved a path to green lights by communicating authentically through strategic stories. I want to thank you for joining me today. Let's jump in. Hi, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of Red Light, Green Light. I am your host, Cindy Skalicky, and today I have brought a wonderful guest to all of you, and I'm very much looking forward to this episode and this conversation. I'd like to read a brief few sentences of introduction for Mahantesh Hiremath, and he is my guest today. So a quick hello, real quick for you, Mahantesh. Good morning.
Thank you for having me. Wonderful to be here.
You are so welcome. I'm really looking forward to this. Everybody, you are in luck. Today, we're going to speak with Mahantesh. He is an engineer, strategist, innovator, former president of ASME, one of the world's largest engineering organizations. If you're new to our show, you know that I love to work with engineers of all kinds because I am a message engineer. So we talk about storytelling and engineering here. Over the course of Mahantesh's career, he has worked in the space industry, helped certify mission-critical satellite systems, served as a congressional fellow on Capitol Hill, and mentored countless engineers and technical leaders all over the world. Mahantesh, I really appreciated our initial conversation around engineering and storytelling. A shout out to Chandrakant Patel for posting your other podcast episode, which is how I learned about you to begin with. So welcome to the show. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience with maybe a few stepping stones of how you arrived on the path that you're on.
Well, thank you so much for first thing for having me on the podcast.
Yeah.
And, it's wonderful that Chandrakant introduced me to you.
Yes. Without knowing it, that's okay.
Yeah. So my career, hasn't followed a straight line. In fact, it has followed what we call as engineering challenges in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
I started with a foundation in civil engineering.
Okay.
And ultimately found myself navigating through four different, environments.
Okay.
And those included subterranean environment, maritime structures, high-rise buildings, and then space.
Okay.
And as I navigated, through this, designing a deep underground strategic petroleum reserves, or analyzing offshore oil platforms, or developing seismic retrofitting for high-rise buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and then engineering, complex space systems.
Yeah.
I always found that the through line through all of this was the willingness to take risk.
Okay.
Every time I changed path, I ended up at the end of the line being the new guy in the new environment. And so in some sense, taking that risk has been a sort of a stepping stone in where my career has evolved. So I always tell my students and also, audiences how my career has evolved fortuitously or more organically
Hmm.
Instead, they could shape their career on their own terms if they take a few steps. So I always look back and I try to uh, develop scenarios
Hmm.
where the incoming workforce can learn from it
Yep.
and develop their own career steps.
Hmm. Fantastic. That's great. And I love the risk taking piece of that because really that's what life and career is all about, is finding the thing that pushes us outside of a comfort zone so we can learn and become the next version of the academic or engineer or human that we are in the midst of becoming. So that's a great way to look at that.
Absolutely. And, Cindy, if I may, I want to share a short story here,
Please.
how the career evolved. So, as you saw, as I described to you, my career evolved from civil engineering and from
Mhm.
deep underground to offshore to on ground. And so, when I was doing that, we had a summer intern come and work for me while I was doing the seismic retrofitting of high-rise building.
Wow.
89 and 93, there were two major earthquakes in California,
Yes.
and
Okay.
there was a lot of interest for that.
Mm.
And the summer intern worked for me, and then he went back to Stanford and graduated in August. And then by the time November came around, my company was going through some financial trouble. So I ended up sending my resume to this intern, and the intern, you know, gave it to his supervisor.
Okay.
So supervisor called me a few days later, and we had a telephone interview, and I thought I did reasonably well. And then a week went by. In fact, 2 weeks went by, and I didn't get hear anything.
Okay.
So I kept on calling and getting his voicemail all the time. And finally, when I got the supervisor online, he said, "Yeah, I remember you, but don't call here again. We don't work with concrete and steel." And so I
Oh,
thought,
jeez. Oh,
so
no.
I, yeah, so I thought my career in aerospace or space systems has come crashing down.
Right.
And it turns out that, how things evolve and how important these are. That the same person called me a week later and he said, "You know what? I was rather rude to you,
Oh,
but probably you could do a few things for us. Why don't you come in for a personal interview?"
oh my
And so
gosh.
I ended up on the site for a personal interview. And by the end of the day, I had the offer letter in my hand. And so began my career
Oh,
in space technology,
you're
Yeah,
kidding. Oh, that's a great story, Mahantesh. And it's there's several kind of threads of communication that I'm hearing, of course, the
yes.
value of that um in person, head to toe ability to meet a person and engage with them as we only can when we are in person.
And
But the person Oh, go ahead.
can you believe that after spending 22 plus years, I ended up being the distinguished engineer in the same company. So I
No.
started as somebody who had no background in aerospace
Yeah.
industry.
Oh my
But you
gosh.
see how much of a great break that person gave me, and
Yeah.
how grateful I am for that
Yeah.
opportunity. And this is
That's
what I carry forward, and I share with my audiences all over the world,
Yep.
telling them this story and how there are nice professionals out in the world. And
Yeah.
so get their help, get
Yeah.
their support, and advance your careers.
I love that. Well, I wanna, highlight the humility of the person who called you back, like, there's that leadership skill in there too around, "I was rude to you." That's such a what a beautiful moment for you to be reflected back, right? Some really powerful leadership vulnerability, some authenticity that reshaped your career arc. I mean, what a really profound moment in your career. That's really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Mahantesh, tell us, you and I talked offline a lot about space and some of the work that you have done in space engineering. And we talked about what's happening now in the world with SpaceX and the new, envisioning that's happening for satellites. And I'd love to to restart that for our audience. And I'd love to hear kind of what are you seeing in the industry as the space industry continues to move forward. I think you've shared how exciting that is, and I'd love to hear your perspective.
Sure, I'm a big space enthusiast, and
Yeah.
after I got that break into this industry, I've ever so become another big fan of it.
Mhm.
And I feel that space will undoubtedly be dominate the global conversation over the
Mhm.
next decade.
Mhm.
And for that reason, I also feel that this is the most exciting time to be in engineering,
Okay.
because not only that we are talking about habitats on Moon and Mars,
Right.
but to set up these habitats, it's not only just the engineers that are required to do
Mhm.
this, but it's the whole village. It will be required to set up a humanity habitat on Moon and Mars,
Yep.
and to work in those challenging, environment. Of course,
Absolutely.
engineers will have to do a great job.
Mhm.
As breathtaking as it is going to
Mhm.
be, they have to also make sure that it ends up being a seamless transition. And
Right.
what a great moment it will be for humanity to have
Yes.
a permanent base on Moon and Mars and continue to
Yes.
explore the rest of the planets, and
Mhm.
try to see how much it can help humanity. And you have always seen, and that goes back all the way how NASA evolved, and
Mhm.
NASA's efforts in space exploration
Right.
led to many discoveries in other areas, whether
Mhm.
those are applicable to health industry, transportation, infrastructure, you name it. So when we say that we want to explore space, the effect of that exploration are very much felt on planet Earth also.
Right. Absolutely.
A quick pause to let you know if you love audiobooks, I've got good news. My best selling book, Red Light, Green Light, is now available on Spotify and wherever you get your audiobooks. Now, back to the show.
And I think what I find so fascinating about space exploration, and we talked about the splashdown and the moon, the astronauts returning to Earth, earlier this year, and
Yep.
how mesmerizing it was, and how it just fueled such an optimism that we haven't felt as a united people in decades. And it's so interesting to me. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot of red lights of risk around space exploration, and it forces people, engineers alike, right, to suspend this belief of like, can we do that? Is that it pushes against the ceiling of what's possible, and that is the human experience, right? I mean, it's just one of the most unique things around space exploration, right? Is that pushing the envelope of what no one has ever done before, and it's a mystery, it's a new frontier, it's exciting, and it's a new storyline, right? In terms of how we're going to do this. So, um,
Right. Absolutely. And Cindy, you did a great job in writing a piece on when the
mm,
astronauts returned.
right?
And I think that was very entertaining. Also, it was very informative as to how
Yeah.
from their body language you could see
Yeah.
how much of an emotion that they have carried through their
Yes.
mission.
Yes. Yes, we were talking about the piece Mahantesh is talking about is just a reflection I wrote on the panel of the 4 astronauts once they arrived back, and just the love that you could feel and the communication that they were experiencing, at such a very high level and a deep level as well. And it's inspiring. It's just you can't help but feel inspired by
Mhm.
what they're doing. Mahantesh, I would love to talk about storytelling as an engineer. I mean, we're talking about pushing the envelope on storytelling toward the outer space storyline, right? And what that
Yes.
might look like. What has your experience been as a storyteller when you've had to move audiences, from maybe younger in your career to now? Have you noticed any trends or things that have worked well for you? Maybe a failure moment? Where would you like to take that?
Certainly, this is a very important question because
Mhm.
we in engineering, we teach our students to solve second order differential equations.
Okay.
And,
Of course.
and over time, during the 4 year career path that they have chosen, they get good at it. But, equations don't move the project and
Mm,
communication does.
mm,
And this is where I think the engineering community has to learn
mm,
that these complex structures, complex systems that engineers are very capable of building,
mhm,
and and they do it for the betterment of humanity. Engineering for humanity is one of the biggest, the mission of
mhm.
ASME. And that's
Yeah,
how we feel that engineers really contribute to the betterment of humanity
right.
because they turn the scientific discoveries into actionable results. And this is
Yeah,
where, and yet the community at large is not aware of it. And this is
right.
where I feel that the engineers need to be good communicators
Mhm.
and developing soft skills about that, whether it is
Yes,
going in front of audiences and
right.
developing skills for public speaking,
Mhm.
all becomes very important.
Yep,
uh, in
absolutely.
fact, my experience on the Capitol Hill, where I
Yes.
learned how effective it was to watch how political leaders handle very skillfully handle communications with
Mhm.
different audiences. And if engineers could learn even 10% of that, they will be able, they
Yeah,
will be able to relate to the rest of the community in a way that will only enhance their own reputation within the
yes.
community.
Well,
And
I
this is
feel like
where I
yeah.
feel that and that is one of the reasons why even when I encourage my student to seek internship, I tell them you don't have to just work in engineering,
Mhm,
companies for
mhm.
internship. You go to these congressional offices and
Right,
look for internship there. You
right.
will develop these, soft skills which will become
Mhm.
very useful to you.
Yes,
Engineering, after all, engineering you have chosen engineering as your career that is going to be with you for the rest of your life. But
right.
the soft skills that you will learn in these congressional offices will be a gift that you will remember forever.
Absolutely. And when we think about I think one of the success stories I've had with engineers is helping them to understand that messaging is just another complex structure of molecules or gears or whatever kind of engineer they might be. It could
Yes.
it could be related to them like it's a chemical compound or it's zeros and ones if you're a software engineer. The message that we need to master for our audiences can be broken down into small pieces that fit together and produce an innovative string of persuasive elements that move audiences to that green light of go. And when we can't communicate complex ideas easily and with inspiration to see the vision, then the innovation itself might fall to the drawing room floor. And that's really that's kind of my mission is to help innovators avoid that trap of, don't let your idea that could change the world, don't let it fall into dust on the drawing room floor because of poor communication. That would be a travesty. So that is partly my mission with engineers particularly because they're brilliant and they know they need that
And
help.
I commend you for that because engineers do require those skills, and
Yeah.
anything you can do to change one engineer to
Yeah.
communicate better,
Right.
you have done your job.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm curious, Mahantesh, tell us more about what you were doing on Capitol Hill. How long were you there? How did that opportunity come to you and what were you what were you hopeful to accomplish? Like tell us a little about that period of your life.
So, of course, I have been part of American Society of Mechanical Engineers, ASME, and
Mhm.
I became a member of the local section. And that's how my career within ASME evolved. And
Okay.
one of the opportunities that came around was ASME is the first engineering society that started sending congressional fellows to work on the Capitol Hill. That started in 1972.
Okay.
And the idea was ASME's congressional fellows will work either on the congressional side or on the executive side, so on the White House or on the
Mhm.
congressional side, and they would be providing you know advice in science and technology related issues, and
Okay.
that got so much appreciated by on the Capitol Hill
Yeah.
that the rest of the societies, whether it was electrical engineering, civil engineering, society of physics,
Mhm.
mathematics, all of them combined together and what became as a what we call as a triple AS, that is the
Okay.
uh, that association now manages to send congressional fellows on the Capitol Hill to work. But
Okay.
ASME was the first one that started
Okay.
it. So I
Okay.
got selected through a nationwide selection process to become a congressional fellow. And that's how I got, opportunity to work on the Capitol Hill.
Do you when you think back, why do you
Yes.
think that you were selected? Like, what do you think people saw in your communication style or your expertise, Mahantesh, that said, we want this guy to go
Yeah.
to Capitol Hill?
Yeah. Cindy, I have a story here also.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Because the selection process is so competitive, in
Hmm.
order to get selected through a nationwide, selection process. The first time around, I did not get selected.
Okay.
So second time when I got a chance to go in front of the selection committee,
Hmm.
this time I was determined not to lose out.
Okay.
And I prepared myself really well for the interview. And of
Okay.
course, these are all very distinguished. The panel is a very distinguished panel, people
Yeah.
who have already worked on Capitol Hill, and they really want to know why you want to go there and what your background is, whether it will be suitable to provide the kind of, expertise that is required.
Hmm.
They are looking for that. And of course, we went through that interview process, but at the end, they asked me, "Do we have anything else to add?" And at that time, what I had done was I had carried the memorabilia of all the professional teams in Washington D.C. So Washington Wizards and Washington, Nationals,
Yes.
and I pulled out those caps and jerseys, and I put them on the desk in front of me, and I said, I don't know what decision you are going to make, but I have already changed my loyalties from San Francisco teams to Washington, D.C. teams.
Stop. That's hilarious. That's fantastic.
And the chair of the committee stood up and shook my hands, and I knew I would clinch the issue.
That is classic, and as an avid sports fan, especially of baseball, that makes my heart sing, and what a great, and creative close. A lot of people don't know how to close an ask or an
Yes.
interview. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, Mahantesh. What a great story.
Thank you.
That's so great. And I think what's really great, I'm glad I asked that question because it shows that it wasn't like easy at for you. You didn't get it the first time, and then you worked on your communication and your approach, and you got it
Yes.
through the second time. Okay, wow,
And
what a
Cindy,
great
can you
story.
imagine somebody like myself, being an immigrant,
Right.
to get this opportunity to go to the Capitol
Yes.
Hill and share what I can do,
Yeah.
and also just be reflective of the great opportunity that this country has provided me and in shaping my career.
Oh,
Every day I would be, starting my day by being grateful for this
mm,
opportunity just to work on the Capitol Hill, and I
right.
thoroughly enjoyed my time there.
Oh, I imagine. And I wonder, how did you, when you think of your ability to persuade and be a good listener and
Yeah.
propel your advice and ideas forward, I can see how valuable your role would be for all of the engineers who help on Capitol Hill. When you walked in the door at the beginning and then you left at the end of your time, how did you change? How had you grown?
Oh, in fact, I shared with you that, I'm a techie from Silicon Valley, so what we know is solve very complex problems,
Yeah.
put them together and, get the best solution possible by working with techie geeks,
Yep.
basically.
Yep, exactly.
So when I went to Capitol Hill and, I looked around and I found that the decision-making process on Capitol is
Mhm.
entirely different.
Okay.
It is very elaborate and it
Okay.
is very deliberate
Mhm.
because every point of view needs to be heard there.
Okay.
And so what I learned is the political leadership as well as the very dedicated staff that works with them, how they are able to pivot from one issue to the other issue
Mhm.
during just a day. They will be
Mm.
looking at world affairs, they will be looking at financial standing, they will be looking at judicial issues, they will be
Mhm.
looking at congressional office issues, they
Mhm.
will be looking at school district issues in their own constituency. All of that they handle so seamlessly that
Yeah.
I would sit there and just wonder how much
Yeah.
of a capacity they have to
Right.
not only deal with the problems, but
Mhm.
also come up with solutions that
Right.
will help as many people as possible.
Right.
And I think I came to admire that. And so when I look back, I feel that in engineering we deal with some variables and some constraints,
Mhm.
but Capitol Hill, the political leaders and their staff, they work with have so many variables and so
Yes.
many constraints, and they are trying to always find an optimal solution that will offend least number of people, and that's
Yeah.
a very difficult job.
That's very
And
hard.
when I shared this with the chair of the committee
Mhm.
during my exit interview, he
Mhm.
stood up and shook my hand and he said, "Mahantesh, I'm going to use that line
Oh,
everywhere
that's
I
right.
go."
Yes. No, that's great. I remember that from your other episode. That's a great line.
Yeah, so
So great.
I feel that compared to that, so when I came back, I realized that, compared to that, what we do in Silicon Valley is a very binary,
Yeah.
process.
Either
Yes or
or.
no, and just
Mhm.
we move on. But
Mhm.
compared to
Yeah.
that, the issues related on Capitol Hill that require human touch and public
Yeah.
policy, that
Mm.
is very different.
Mm.
And I came to admire the political leadership for their skills
Mhm.
in handling that.
Mhm. Well, you can imagine the cognitive load on each person every day going from one meeting to the next of different topics. And I was, as you were talking, I was thinking also about how the high impact of these decisions and the solutions they're providing is so different than traditional business for most of us in terms of how many people will be affected by the decisions that are being made, and why it's so important to have that relational component and deliberate decision making process in place. That makes a lot of sense. what an interesting time. I'm sure you came away different from that period of time. How many years was that you were
So
in?
so that was 1 year, but
Okay.
I learned a lot of things
Yeah.
during that,
Mm,
and I developed friendships there that are still
sure.
ongoing.
Yeah.
And every time I visit Washington D.C., I'm still able to go and see my
Yeah.
friends, and share time and
Yeah.
rejoice of the times we
Yeah.
had together.
Quick station break, listeners. If your team is ready to level up its strategic storytelling, I would love to meet you and hear your story. Shoot me a connection request at LinkedIn or via email, and we'll set up time to chat. Now, back to the show.
Well, and yeah, as you said, as an immigrant, what a beautiful opportunity to contribute to the country that you now call home. I mean, that's just a really beautiful thought and way to give back and give forward of your
Yes.
expertise. So that's
Yes.
fantastic.
And
Mahantesh, I'd love.
ASME has been sending, 3 to 4 congressional fellows every year. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. What a great role. I mean, what an interesting way to experience engineering and decision making at a larger, higher level. And
It is.
I didn't really realize how um, that was a possibility for engineers. So, those listening, if you want to reach out to Mahantesh to find out what to do next to become a congressional fellow, I suspect you'd be willing to share your stories and thoughts with them,
Oh,
Mahantesh.
absolutely. If I
Yeah.
could encourage one person to do that,
Yeah.
I will feel very grateful.
Sounds
Yes.
like a game changer. Mahantesh, I'd love to turn toward the topic of the engineers that you help now and that you instruct, and also just through the lens of the ASME and all the engineers you've seen and worked with, through that organization and the
Yes.
mentorship that you've done. What are some, from your time at ASME and
Yes.
into teaching where you are now? What are some thoughts, conclusions, observations about the next generation of engineers that you have?
So certainly, in the engineering community, there have been great stalwarts, so I
Mhm,
always, uh, for inspiration from these
mhm,
people. And and the three people that really come to mind
mhm.
for me are, Steve Wozniak,
Yeah.
Nikola Tesla, and in modern times, Elon Musk.
Sure.
So if I were to share with you, Wozniak was the one who really was the real engine that turned, Steve Jobs' dreams
Mhm,
into reality.
mhm. Yep.
On the other hand, if you look at Nikola Tesla, I
Mhm.
think his vision was centuries ahead of his time.
Mm,
And what Elon has done, Musk has done in terms of democratizing the access to space,
yes.
and really getting everybody excited about interplanetary habitat.
Yes.
Years from now, the humanity will be grateful to him for
Yep.
really initiating in that and doing it through a private enterprise. So
Mhm,
when I see what happened to SpaceX IPO on Wall
mhm.
Street,
Yeah.
this is the biggest IPO, and I'm so glad that it has happened to an engineering company. And
Right.
what a great asset it is. And finally, engineers are getting their due on the Wall Street also, I guess.
Yes. Right. I mean.
So you asked me about what about the next generation. So, this is what I really share with my audiences, and also through my students at Santa Clara University, that this decade is going to be the most exciting in engineering,
Mm,
and they should look to it with a lot of optimism.
mm,
And the fact that they have chosen engineering as a career itself is
mm.
a great start for them.
Yep.
There are only 5% of the community that are engineers in the community, and
Mm,
within that,
hmm.
less than 1% are women engineers. So
Oh, yes.
particularly for my student women engineers,
Mhm.
I tell them that you are very, very special. And I
Yes.
tell all my students, before you come to the class, stand in front of the mirror, tell yourself that you belong to that 5 percentile of the community. You are very, very special. And that's why you are coming to my class.
There you go.
And indeed, they feel very encouraged by that. And I feel that with AI and ML, their opportunities to solve very complex problems
Mhm.
uh, has has gone up so much that I think they have all these tools available for them now.
Yeah.
And if they utilize them to
Mm,
their advantage, I think they will serve the humanity as no one has done
mm.
over the many, many centuries.
Yeah, that's just what a great thought as we look to empower the next generation. As you said, 5% is a small number and we want that to grow. And then the 1% for the female audience is
Yes.
too small. It's just too small. And therein lies the other challenge as well. If, to be truly great and to be truly transformational, I would suggest getting those communications and storytelling skills folded in will help them rise to the top even faster and with more influence so they can change the world the way they hope to. And I think that's just a natural blend of skills that the greatest engineers in some capacity have. Whether it's Elon Musk showing us the storyline of space and showing us what might be possible, or Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. I'm reading Jobs's autobiography, and
Yes.
he was a masterful storyteller, absolutely masterful
Yeah.
orator, but not initially. He was actually not good at all in the beginning. And then he put, a lot of skills and practice into place to become the Steve Jobs that we all
Yeah.
know. So it's
Yeah.
possible. That's what I want to tell everybody listening. It's possible to get the storytelling qualities and capabilities that your future audiences need. Just learn the skills and off we'll go, right? So that's
So,
wonderful.
Cindy, I want to commend for what you are doing
Sure. Oh, thank you.
in getting this message out. How communication is very important, and you are
Mm,
doing it to the engineering community,
mm,
and that is really very valuable.
thank you.
And I tell my students that if you can solve second order differential equations, you should be able to you can get the soft skills by practicing them. So,
Yes. Yes, exactly. We need both, right? That's the bottom line. Well,
yeah.
thank you, Mahantesh. That's a lovely sentiment to end on. Do you have one word of advice to others listening around engineering and the path that they might be on, whether they're in their later career and they're leading people, or they're early in their career and they're getting ready to be led?
So again, my message is very simple that this is the most exciting time to be in engineering. Uh, Engineers are very special people as far as the community is concerned. So keep doing great jobs, do your best. And if equations can't solve the problem, do what your heart is telling you.
Oh, I like that. Well said. And we will can't beat that. Let's just end right there with the rest of our audience listening. Thank you so much, Mahantesh. I really appreciate your storytelling today and being with us.
Thank you again for having me and
Yes.
have a great day. Bye.
Yes, have a wonderful rest of your day. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you listening and watching. Thank you for joining me today. And next week, we will be back again with another wonderful senior leader on Red Light, Green Light. Until then, get out there, find yourselves an audience of stakeholders. You need to move from the red light of risk to the green light of go, and get out there and nail it. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.